Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. We do have a couple of people at like Christmas parties and lots of stuff. I have two people that said they're going to pop in maybe on their way home. So we're just going to keep it recording. Tonight is one of my favorites. I know I literally said that free week for 7 weeks. But every time I work on what I'm going to talk about, I realize it's one of my favorites and it was life changing for me. And really, in essence, that's how I came up with all of this. So it's no surprise to me that they're all amazing to me. So over the past few weeks, obviously, we've been on this journey. Wait, I got to make sure I'm really recording. Hold on. I get nervous now. It's recording, right? It says it's recording. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, we've just been doing so much work defining the life we want, that feel good life. And we've settled. A lot of us have settled for so many years. And we know what we really want now in our relationships, in our finances, in our careers, in our families, in our health. And this vision isn't just a dream, ladies. It's actually the life we're working to create. And every single week, when we learn these things, whether it's on the recorded lesson or when we're working together here or in our one on ones, you're getting all the tools to really be able to put things in motion. And how many of you are believing you can create the life you want? How many of you are starting to believe that you're really picking up some tools and you can? All right, pretty good. Okay, well, this week, last week, we did the emotional ladder. And I did my one-on-ones with most of you guys, and we really talked about the emotional regulation. I saw a couple side eyes there. We're still available. Make your one-on-one sessions. Really, it's emotional regulation. So emotional awareness is one thing, but the ability to really recognize and then manage and shift our emotional state is what this emotional growth, personal growth is really all about. By understanding where we are on that ladder, we can, or in the basement or on the steps to the basement, we really can learn to catch ourselves in those lower emotional states like frustration and hopelessness and overwhelm and anger. And then we can take steps to move higher. And we want to be in that place of hopefulness and optimism and joy, right? So anybody want to share anything about something coming up on the emotional ladder for them this week before we jump into what's next? Anybody have a chance to climb the ladder, even if you didn't do it in actual steps? I heard from a couple of you that it wasn't actual steps. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be actual steps. Those are the S's and the C's looking for the actual steps. But if you climbed or you got out of the basement or you moved up, you saw something, you recognized it, and you were able to shorten the amount of time that normally you would stay down below. I want to hear about it. Who's got it? Karen, you unmuted. Here we go. What do you got?
It's not exactly what you're saying, but it's something that I thought a lot about when I was listening to the past couple sessions. And that for me, the gentleman that I'm no longer with, he was stuck down low in the emotional ladder in all areas of his life. And I realized it was repelling me. Like, remember near the end, I looked over at him and I'm like, no, like, I don't want to be surrounded by that. Like, they say opposites attract, not in this case. Like, I am typically a positive person. And in the beginning, I probably let him bring me down. But I don't want to be around people who that's where they live and they're okay with that they don't see anything wrong with it. Life sucks and it's challenging and whatever. And it's just something that I don't want in my life. And so relearning all this, I was like, yeah, he's a very negative person. And I choose not to be around negativity like that.
I love it. And you said the word repel, right? I'm going to actually share my screen, but you said the word repel, and we have to remember we really are like magnets. We really are like magnets. And so, I know a year ago, starting to work with you, Karen, you never would in a million years have thought that you were going to make this choice to just not want to be with him anymore, right? And we often can't see how the universe will make it so that we know we're not a match. If you're in this constant feeling where you're being pulled down there and you're up here, you're not a match. And so everything that goes on in that relationship is going to start to be a red flag. And there's no way to get away from it because you can't bring yourself lower anymore. That's the beauty of all of this. It's almost like you can't find yourself down there without recognizing it and immediately working to move yourself up. And when you realize that you're working to move yourself up is going against the grain, the person you're trying to spend most of your time with, that person's no longer a match. And it doesn't have to be that they're bad and we're good, right? Again, remember I said there's nothing bad or good about this emotional ladder. The below emotions are not bad. They're learning. They're places for us to learn. They're places for us to grow. It just means that our soul is not in congruence with the thought process that we're having down there. And when we're with someone in a relationship that's down there and our thoughts aren't in alignment, it's the same thing. It just means we can't possibly see it from that mindset. And we're going to talk tonight about victim mindset, and it will bring a lot of this up because that's what was happening is you were constantly being pulled into this victim triangle where you no longer lived. You no longer saw a place for yourself to live. So that's amazing. Congratulations. Kudos to you, Karen. Anybody else want to tell me how maybe they moved up this ladder at some point this week? I'll try and move it this way. Is anybody able to go from disappointment or overwhelm or frustration up to contentment even, or gratitude? I don't know if I said this before, but you can't physiologically feel something above the line and below the line at the same time. It's like impossible from a physics standpoint. So like if you're frustrated and you can get to gratitude on something else, you're no longer down below the line. It doesn't even have to be on the same topic. We won't like smolder down here. All right. Anybody else? Teresa, Antoinette, James, Mary Margaret. Anybody pull yourself up the ladder? Or like Karen, notice somebody else in the ladder, in the basement? All right. I saw a couple fingers moving out, but I will move on. Well, here's the thing. Emotional regulation, it's not a one-time thing, right? It's not we go down below and then we come up and then we never get down below by the same thing again, right? It's just really proactive. We need to apply all of this stuff in real life situations, especially in our relationships with other people, in order for us to see what causes us to go below the line and the different kinds of steps and things that we can do to come back above the line. So this week's lesson I posted yesterday was an introduction to understanding other people. So we started learning our own DISC personalities, but DISC helps us see that not everyone thinks or acts the same way we do. And that's really a good thing. So every personality style has its strengths and its triggers. And by recognizing them, we can really start to relate to other people with more patience and more awareness, and really just start to recognize some of where our triggers can be weaned as well. Does that make sense to you guys? Did anybody do the DISC assessment yet? Yeah. Oh, come unmute. I want to hear. I want to hear what you are. I wish I could. I want to guess what you are, but I have them in my head. If you did the DISC, unmute yourself and tell me what letter you were. And if there's two letters, just say like capital I, lowercase s, or whatever it is. Who's got their results? Go ahead, Karen.
All right. So remember I said I was going to take it again because I took it, I guess maybe last February or March. And
Yeah.
I did the first one you sent, and it was a little frustrating. I couldn't really
Yeah.
get the true answer. But then the one you sent out, I was like, I'm still an uppercase S, lowercase I, which you said didn't really surprise you. And I mean, I enjoyed the second test a little bit better because the Tony Robbins one at the end when he had these rankings of like 8 things that are, I'm like, well, some of them mean nothing to me. Like, but I'm like, where am I going to put that? But you know, I know I've grown, but I've probably my entire life been an SI. And
Yeah. And you're not going to grow out of SI. You're absolutely not going to grow out of SI. You're always going to be SI, which is why I wasn't surprised that it didn't change. It's just that if you notice what the triggers are for the S's, that's the stuff we've worked on for a year. So you're less likely to go into triggered S and behave that way than you were a year ago.
And like, my two of my kids did it, and it's very interesting because it's spot on, and now I have a better understanding of how they view things and how to approach things with them and why they respond the way they do. And it's not just being a jerk. It's like that's how they see it.
It's how
Um,
they see it.
yeah.
It's really how that's the compassion. That's the empathy. You know how you're like, how could you think this way? Then you do the disc and they do the disc and you're like, oh, that's how you think this
Mhm.
way. Like it's not me. You really do think that way. You really don't take other people's feelings into consideration. You really care more about efficiency than you do about my feelings. You really want to be right all the time. Like when you can see what other people's disc profiles are, and like I said, the more you guys, there's a book about it, which you don't have to read. You really, if you look at the papers that are in your workbook, that's enough for you to really know. And if you can get people in your life to take this test and really just assure you of what they are, you're really going to know how to approach them differently. It is a game changer. I want to hear from anybody else. Does anybody else have their letter? Jamie. No, let me see if I can ask you. I'll ask you. There you go.
Okay. Well, I was an S and SI also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it surprise you?
No. Oh,
No. Do you want Mitch to take it?
yes, I'm gonna have him take it.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna have him take it. I'm
So
curious
when you
to
read
see
about
who.
it, was it who you are? When you read it, are you like, I'm totally like that? Could you relate?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
I didn't know if you would be a higher I. I knew you were going to be an IS or an SI. I didn't know which one was going to dominate. I
Yeah.
didn't know which one was going to dominate. It's just so interesting because you just start to see how people tick, right? And then you know how to speak to people. And like there are certain disc profiles that want to be pushed, and there are certain disc profiles that need to come to it by themselves. There are certain disc profiles that like structure, and there are some, like I have a couple of people that aren't structure at all, which is like the I and the D, right? And they're like, I'm not doing all these steps. Like, I can't do these steps. And then you S's and C's are like, I'm taking the steps and I'm at step number 4. And it's just very like organized, right? And so everybody's different. And that's why I present things in multiple different ways, because everybody's going to grasp them completely different. Jamie, it would be interesting if you could get the kids to take it and
Yes.
just see, right? Like,
Mhm.
again, if we could get our parents to take it, this is how I get people in my life to do these things. I say, I have homework or I'm working on a project for work. I don't say it's part of my therapy, it's part of my life coaching. I don't say any of that because they don't want to be part of your project. They want to be helpful, they don't want to be analyzed. So when I say, like, even Teresa, you're shaking your head. If you say you're doing it for work, and you need a couple of peoples to use as an example, would they do you a favor? They'll do you a favor. If you say, I want to analyze our relationship, they're all going to be like, no, no, no one's going to do it. So that's how I get everyone in my house to do everything. I tell them it's either a homework assignment or I have to do it for work. So anybody else know their letters that wants to share? Go ahead, Teresa. Let me ask you to oh, you got it.
ID.
ID. I totally knew you were an ID.
Mm.
ID is so it's very interesting because you lead with people, but you want to do your own thing your way, right? And you're a motivator and you're inspiring and you're an influencer. But there's people that are like, everything has to be our way. Right. And it doesn't have to be your way. It's just the most efficient way that's showing. And your eye needs efficiency in order to get things moving, or you're moving on to something else. So once you start to really get it, I'm an ID as well. So once you start to really get it, like I said in the lesson, you could be excited for all the things that make you you. instead of those things that we used to be like, what's wrong with me? You're like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. This is how I show up. And this can absolutely be a strength. But you can get vulnerable and say, I absolutely can see how this is a weakness, right? Like my D comes in and demands people because no one else is picking up the slack. But I realized I have to give the S's and the C's in my life a minute to jump in because I'm so quick and I'm so loud and I'm so fast and I'm so influential that if they don't have a second to breathe where they feel like they can chime in without being bamboozled or overpowered, then they're not going to want to be in the same room with me. That was big realization for me. And I loved it because I actually had actionable things to work on for my own personality to take what could be seen as a weakness and enhance it with my strengths. It's really fun. All right. I'm going to move on because tonight we're not diving too much into DISC. We're going to do, so next week we won't have a group session, but you're going to get a lesson, and the lesson is going to be on love languages. So that's another one where you're going to take a quiz about yourself, and then hopefully you're going to be able to take a quiz about other people in your life too. And both of these things are ways for you to gather information about other people so that you can know how you show up and you can know how they show up, and you can stay anchored in the truth. We can stop telling ourselves a lot of these stories about the relationships that we have with other people. So we worked a lot on the limiting beliefs and the triggers and the fears that we have. And now what we're going to start entering into is that other people showing up in their way make our limiting beliefs and our fears shine through. So it's our interaction with them now. So we have these limiting beliefs and we have these fears, but now we have these interactions with other people and they're poking on those fears. If I talk to any of you about having the thorns, these are our thorns and they're poking on the thorns. And we're trying to figure out how we can control the entire environment to never touch our thorns. And now we're realizing they all have their own thorns. So DISC is going to help us understand our personalities and other people's tendencies, but it's really just the first step. What really is going to matter is how we react to these differences in the moment. And that's the emotional regulation of the emotional ladder, especially when we're triggered and when we're frustrated or we're misunderstood. So tonight, we're going to talk about two things. Some of you I've talked to about doc work, and some of you are going to be brand new to it, and that's okay. And we're going to talk about the drama triangle, and they really are connected. So they both are going to show us the roles that we play, mostly unconsciously, in all of our relationships. And doc work really teaches us how to stay grounded and balanced and above the line or on the line when you're looking at the emotional ladder, instead of reacting with these old patterns that surround those limiting beliefs and the fears that we've already kind of identified. So like I said, it's one thing to know it. It's another thing to be able to figure out how to not let it steal the joy and the peace and the hope and the freedom and the enthusiasm and the gratitude and the contentment and the love from our life, because that's what it's doing. It's stealing it. So, all right, I'm going to start with the drama triangle. So this is the drama triangle. In the 1960s, it's very simple. It's a triangle. In the 1960s, there was a psychologist. His name was Dr. Stephen Cartman, and he introduced this drama triangle. Raise your hand if you've heard of the drama triangle before. No? Karen has. Obviously, we did this. Let's see, who else? I'm missing somebody. Hold on. Seeing everybody on the screen. Oh, I am. Antoinette popped off. I'm like, where did she go? She popped off. All right, let me make this smaller. Okay, so Cartman designed this triangle basically to show the destructive dynamics that play out in a lot of our relationships, and within ourselves. So we can be in this drama triangle to our own self, and we can be in this drama triangle in a relationship. So basically, there's three main roles that people can play at any given time. We could be the victim, persecutor, or the rescuer. And each one of those roles is really just a result of patterns that we formed out of habit in how we interact with other people and ourselves when we have our needs that aren't met, or these fears, or these unresolved emotional wounds. Can you see, Karen? I know you're leaning forward. Should I make, I don't know that I can make it any bigger. It's okay. Okay. Um, so they're basically all coping mechanisms. Each piece of this triangle is a coping mechanism that was usually picked up in our childhood, obviously, right? Everything comes from then, or during really challenging times in our adult life where we were trying to navigate feelings of insecurity or powerlessness, or really feeling like we had no control, like life was happening to us, right? This is before we all were able to look at things through that feel good lens and say that life is really happening for us. But now they may have helped you at one point survive a certain time of your life, but now they're really just keeping you stuck in this pattern that most of us don't even recognize exists. And it blocks our ability to move forward with our life and thrive in a lot of the areas of the wedge and create that feel good life that we all say we want. All right, so here's how they work. So the victim, I'm sure you've all heard, you're such a victim, you're such a martyr, right? Like people say that to everybody all the time. And it's they say it like an insulting kind of way. And basically, it's because when you're the victim, you're acting like you're powerless or you're overwhelmed. The victim is that person that sees life happening to them rather than anything that they can influence on their own, or what trying to look for a lesson or how life is really happening for them. Okay. So when you're in victim, we feel helpless, we feel frustrated, we're usually completely incapable of solving the problem by ourselves. And we're looking for someone to come in and rescue us, or someone to come in and validate that we are helpless. There. That's what we're looking for in the victim role. We feel safe being the victim because we can completely avoid taking responsibility for our own situation or our own actions. If we can continue to believe that we have no blame in any situation or in anything that we're saying or doing, it's going to reinforce the feeling that we're powerless, right? So that's the victim, and it's all the way at the bottom of that triangle. Next up, we have the persecutor. So persecutor needs to control. So the situation is overwhelming to them, and it's making them feel out of control when anything else is going not the way they want it. So they blame, criticize, and dominate other people so that they can mask those fears or their own insecurities. So persecutor tries to regain control in chaos by asserting dominance to people, and it's usually not what other people need. And it tends to just create more conflict and emotional turbulence for the person that they're interacting with or the entire group of people, because now you have this person showing up aggressively trying to take control of the situation. So that person's sense of power comes from being right or completely in control of everybody and everything. And it alienates people and perpetuates those lower vibrational feelings for themselves and for other people. Nobody likes it, right? And then there's the rescuer. So the third piece of the triangle is the rescuer. And we all know a rescuer. The rescuer feels compelled to save everybody. And it's usually at the expense of their own life or their own well-being or their own priorities. So they get their self-worth from being needed and solving problems for other people. It makes them feel good enough, right? They usually have that limiting belief of I'm not good enough. So their actions may seem amazing for the people that they're trying to help, but they stem from a desire to avoid their own uncomfortable emotions and fear of being not needed, and just throwing themselves into somebody else's stuff so that then they can fix it and then walk away. So rescuers give so much of themselves that it usually creates problems in their own lives with their own priorities, and rescuers have a hard time balancing their wheel. They're balancing their own priorities and feeling pulled in multiple different directions because they've always been the person that comes in and rescues or saves, right? And a lot of times this pattern is really hard to break because the people that we're used to saving expect it from us. So those are the roles. None of them sound great, right? So do any of you relate to any of these roles? One or more of these roles? You want to come off mute, Mary Margaret, and just tell me kind of what you're thinking?
Oh, I'm 100% the rescuer. 100%.
And do you think you're always the rescuer?
More times than not, yes.
So you don't find yourself in persecutor or victim. You find yourself jumping in at the expense of your own
Sometimes
needs.
victim, if I'm in a dark place and I'm like spiraling, sometimes victim, but I don't feel like it's my go-to. Like I
Mhm.
feel I think it's my compassion for feeling like other people are experiencing things that I've experienced and I didn't have the help. I didn't have the people to rescue me. So when I feel like I can help somebody else in that situation, it gives me it makes me feel better. But it's
Yep.
not always well received because it's not always like people want you to do that. Like my sister will tell me, she'll tell me a problem and it'll involve money. And like we've talked about, money is like a trigger for us. So she'll be like, I'm not asking you to give me money. Like, stop offering money to me. I just want you to hear me. I just want you to listen to me. But I'm like the rescuer and the protector, and I just want to protect her. And I see her struggling or upset, and I just want to fix it, And so I've
Yeah.
gotten you can't fix it. And sometimes I don't realize that's what I'm trying to do, but maybe I am.
Yeah. And you're probably a natural problem solver, right? And we're looking to help. But the rescuer, when they feel under, so we can have multiple roles. And you said, I guess sometimes I could feel like the victim when I'm really like overwhelmed. Well, when the rescuer feels unappreciated or the rescuer feels pulled too thin because they've rescued too many people at the expense of all their own needs, now they can fall into victimhood very easily. The rescuer can easily fall down that line. And look, it's a downward line, right? Easily fall down that line and really feel like you want someone to save you, right?
But hearing
So very,
persecutor, and I think of my ex-boyfriend because that's partially why we broke up because he was just so intense. And when he felt like I wasn't falling in line with everything he wanted me to do, he became very controlling. And it's like I saw a completely different side of him. And I've struggled since that, like what was real and what wasn't, and what was me and what was he just saying because of his own traumas and his own issues. And I can see it more clearly now, but that still, like, Karen was talking about her previous relationship. It affects you even when you're not in it still. You can still feel the ricochet and the domino effect of it. And so I'm listening to you talk and I'm like, oh, that's that person. That's me. That's him. And yeah.
that's it. And then the persecutor can feel like they did a lot of damage and then jump in to be a rescuer and try and clean up the mess that they made. So persecutors, if they overdo it with controllingness and they push people to the brink, then they jump in and they try and fix it. And then at that point, the rescuer becomes the victim because they don't want that, right? Like, so it's very interesting to see how easily these shifts can happen between the triangle once you're in it. This triangle, if you look at where it is, it's all below the line, right? Look at the pointing. Which way is it pointing? It's pointing down. So when you're in this, you're in that spiral. That's really hard to get out of. And it's very interesting. I'm glad you're thinking about other people. I immediately thought about other people too. Who am I and who are the other people in my life? The people that we spend, 5 people you spend the most time with. They'll come to mind, right? And you'll start to see, even if like Karen, you feel sucked down here by some people, you're like, yeah, I don't want that. Right. And so we're going to talk about how to flip this triangle upside down and what we can do to actually empower people to stay up here. But there is a flip. Who else? Who else can relate to something and wants to share? Come on, Teresa, you're laughing. I'm unmuting you.
Definitely rescuer.
Definitely
if
rescuer.
and if I ever fall victim, I rescue myself. So I'm definitely rescuer. Then I go, what the hell am I doing? No, snap out of it. Ridiculous. Yeah.
Because you
Can't.
could feel it. You could feel that you
Yeah.
slipped down to victim, because victim
Yeah.
is really kind of like despair and hopelessness, right? Like if you look
Mhm.
at the emotional ladder, it goes down. Like rescuer or frustrated, overwhelmed, disappointed, probably like, persecutors pissed. They're angry, right? They're blameful, right? And then you go down to victim and we're down here in like guilt and shame and powerless, right? You could see it. You could see it. Can you think about other people in your life too, Teresa, or you just see where you play? Can you think of like your kids? Can you think of your husband? Can you think of family members, siblings?
No, yeah, family. Oh, my mother, victim, 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 victim. Oh, victim. She is the damsel in distress. She's always been. So
And if
been,
you're
I've
the
been her
rescuer,
rescuer since I was a child. That a
and that's it.
therapist. Yeah. Oh my God. I can't even. This whole session will be about me. Yeah.
Yeah. But just seeing how that could be so draining, right? It could
Yeah.
be so draining if you have someone that's always the victim and and listen, most of us, again, this is unconscious, you guys. So most of us have been draining our energy. If you are a rescuer, your energy is just being sucked out of you by the victims in your life, and you've never had the tools to really turn it around, right? And we're going to work on some tools, and we're going to work on another way to look at this too in a minute. Anybody else? Anybody aligned with the persecutor? I am a persecutor. That is who I am. I am when victims are victim. Well, I'm a recovering persecutor, is what I'm going to say. What before I did all of this work, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. And then I realized that I was persecuting because victims made me feel overwhelmed. And I knew enough to know I couldn't rescue them at my own expense. So instead, I had to persecute them to tell them all the things they did wrong to get to be a victim while also trying to help them. Right. And obviously, you can see how that doesn't work, but I'm draining my energy down here too. Right. I could see it. I could see it. I'm a natural fixer too. But usually maybe I tried to rescue them and they didn't listen. And so now I was being a persecutor. Like you should have listened. You should have listened. I already told you what to do with this. Now I have to deal with it. Now I got to come and get you. We're going to talk about that. Anybody else want to share what they're most relating to with this? Can you see how a victim could be in victimhood and then lash out and become a persecutor? Right? Because you're being a victim and you're saying, save me, save me, save me. And then you're looking at somebody and saying, you're the reason I'm here. Right? So now you're both the victim and you're the persecutor, and you're just looking to be rescued. And there's no one to rescue you. So you're frustrated. Right? And it's just, think about the fluidity of the triangle. At any given moment, we can move into any one of these roles. Right? It's most of us have like a dominant role, and then we can see how, if the needs aren't being met, because remember, this is all about getting our needs met. We don't even know we're doing this. So many of us have just learned these roles, like Teresa was saying, as kids. We watched our parents and our role models and in the roles that they played, and we adapted roles. And some of us survived very dysfunctional households, or we picked them up when we were in adult relationships that we didn't have the tools for. Like Mary Margaret was saying, I know that there was a persecutor there, but how do you deal with that if you don't have the tools to deal with that? You don't know. We are trying to express how we feel in a healthier way, and we don't have the tools to do it. So this trauma triangle is really just a way for us to avoid responsibility for what's going on, and being willing to be vulnerable enough to look for situations for exactly what they are and find the tools and resources. And that's emotional growth. And unfortunately, most people in the world don't even know that they need emotional growth, or that life can be any other way. Some people will live their entire lives in this victim triangle and never know that it's a thing, and never know that there's a way out of it. Because by taking on these roles, they feel safe. They feel completely in control. The victim feels safe because they're avoiding fear of failure. They're avoiding that big fear of rejection because they're completely relinquishing all responsibility. Like, I had nothing to do with this. This happened to me. Like, I'm good enough. This happened to me. Right. And the persecutor is staying safe because they're avoiding their own insecurities by projecting them on other people. Right. Like, that was me. Like, my insecurity was that I wasn't good enough. So when I give you advice on how to do something and you don't do it, now I'm going to blame you for it because I'm good enough. Damn it. the answers, right? Like that's my own fear, my own insecurity. And the rescuer feels safe because they get to avoid all their own emotional pain and throw it on somebody else. We don't have to deal with any of our emotional trauma. We don't have to deal with any of the circumstances causing the trauma, any of the boundaries that we need to put in to prevent us from falling down into that trauma again. We're just going to focus on saving other people, and that's going to be our lives. But the problem is, by staying in these roles, nothing resolves, nothing. This entire cycle just keeps perpetuating, and all of our emotional baggage just stays in place. And it keeps us trapped. We're in this cycle of blame and hopelessness and overcompensation of the fears that are the limiting beliefs that we have. And we have emotional chaos in our life. I remember starting to work with some of you, and the word that you kept coming up when I did all of the interviews was, I just want peace. I just want peace. That's why I said, like, this is going to help you calm the chaos, right? Because we feel chaotic. All right. So to better understand the drama triangle, I'm going to move into doc work. And some of us have talked about doc work. Come here, buddy. Come here. Come here. He's going to cry. I have to let him out of here or he's going to cry and bother me. Hang on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Many of you have been on with me when he does that. He's like a child and he cries because he knows that I'm on the phone, and I'll usually give him a treat to just shut him up. Okay. So I kicked him out. All right. So some of us have done doc work. I've sent you my blog on doc work. Doc work, again, this is where like, oh, it's so juicy and yummy. And it's amazing because it's a visual that we really can all get behind, and we can talk about it. And it's like new language. Okay, so your doc symbolizes your emotional stability. Okay, so that's your ability to stay above the line or at the line, neutral, balanced, and above, right? That's your doc. We can stay calm, regulated, thoughtful in the 8 C's of wise mind, right? Calm, cool, and collected. That's what we are when we are on our dock, sitting on the dock of the bay. We are chilling on our dock, okay? But in life, we tether our docs to the people that are closest to us. So all the other docs around us, they are our family, our friends, maybe our business partners. They could be our siblings. They could be our spouses. They could be our children. And sometimes we pull our dock close to somebody enough. So all the docks have ropes on them, and you can pull people and you can tie your docks together. And sometimes, like in a family, you're pulling your dock so close to somebody that you almost have a double dock, and you can't even see where each dock starts and each dock ends. And then you build joint structures on the docks. And that's like marriage or a business partnership, right? Like you're tied that close that you literally build structure on top of 2 tied docks. Okay. And when you're grounded on your dock, you really can navigate challenges very thoughtfully and effectively. Like sit on top of the dock, you can see the entire lake or ocean or whatever. You can see everything around you, and you're thinking clearly. It's emotional intelligence. You are calm and grounded on your dock. But when you fall into the role of the drama triangle, you leave your dock and you end up in the water, and you're flailing around in the water in emotional chaos. So I made this picture to show you what dock work looks like when you're off your dock. Okay, so imagine the middle dock is your dock or a group dock that you built things on, and then all those other docks are tied, really tethered, tied tight to you. I had a different picture of the rescuer. She had her little kids on the side. I don't know why I put this one on there. Anyway, when you're grounded on your dock, you navigate life's challenges. And when you're off your dock, you're one of these 3 people. So this is the persecutor, the victim, or the rescuer. So just to put a visual on it, the victim is in the water panicking and not sure how to save themselves. They're really looking for other people to rescue them, but in their panic, they also can pull people down. So think of someone that's drowning and flailing. And if you come to rescue them, they literally can pull you over, pull you under, right? And you can drown too. The persecutor jumps in the water angrily, blaming or criticizing the victim on how or why they got in the water in the first place. And they actually have the ability to help, but they're trying to regain their own sense of control in the water so that they don't start drowning, that it's just causing more turbulence to the person that was actually drowning and maybe other people that are jumping in the water too. And then the rescuer abandons their own dock completely to save the victim or the persecutor or both, because now the rescuer is seeing complete and utter chaos going on in the water. Now imagine the dynamic of three people, maybe in your family or with a friend, and the rescuer comes in and they're like, okay, guys, it's okay. We're all going to be okay. Right? Like, that's the rescuer. Meanwhile, the rescuer's in the middle of cooking dinner and her kid's crying because she was supposed to be helping somebody with a math test. Right? And now she's on the phone trying to rescue her sister, best friend, her mother, whoever it is, and her life is falling to shit and her kids feeling abandoned and they're crying, right? Like, so the rescuer is jumping in and they're trying to fix the situation, but at their own expense. So when we're off our docks, we can't see anything that we would be able to see if we're on top of the dock, right? So our intentions can be noble, but if we don't have our own stability, we completely lose sight of everything that's going on up there. So can you see how if you stay up there, you're calm, cool, collected? And you see how when you're in the water, you can't see a single thing and you think everything's happening right there to me in there, right? So we jump off our docks. We jump off our docks when we have fear, when we have anger, when we have desperation, and we're dragging ourselves and other people, no matter which of these roles we take, into the emotional turbulence of the water. So, like I said before, the good news is once we're aware of this and we're willing to take responsibility for our emotional state, we really can flip the triangle. And the triangle flips into the empowerment triangle. Okay. So the empowerment triangle is basically where every role that was in the drama triangle just gets flipped, turned upside down into a more positive way. So the victim becomes the creator. So where life happens to me, now we say, I influence life, right? This is someone who's taking intentional action to design their lives. This is you in this program, right? We're the creators doing the Untangled experiment because we're choosing to stay on top of the dock and see that we have the ability to create the outcome that we want. Okay. So the persecutor becomes the challenger. That's someone who encourages growth and accountability with compassion, right? Hello, I was the persecutor and now I'm here telling all of you guys that you absolutely can do it. Right? I had to change that role in my own family dynamic too. So I was the one where my kids, let's say, so I'm anxious, right? But when one of my kids was anxious, it made me anxious. So I would become the persecutor to try and tell them, you know how to be grounded. You know how to go do those breathing exercises, right? Can you see how that's not going to help them get grounded? Right? So I had to learn how to go from being a persecutor to being just a challenger with a constructive way of getting their needs met. So now I'll say, can you remember the different tools that we have to calm ourselves down? Which one feels best for you? And I literally do that now. And I almost play stupid because my persecutor wants to really like jab it in there. And I almost say, wasn't there something that we learned that was a really good way when we got to our room to calm ourselves down? And then they'll be like, yeah, I learned that I can flip my, lava lamp upside down and count to 20. And I'm like, that's it. You count to 20 and flip your lava lamp, right? So I had to learn how to go to that calm, cool, collected up top. And I'm still in the same role, but now I'm empowering somebody to encourage their own growth and take accountability. But I'm doing it with compassion, not with blame. Can you see it? Right? It's just completely above the line. Like I was down here and now I'm up here. I'm giving them uplifting comments instead of victimized comments. I'm not being dramatic. I used to be like, oh, are you sad? Right? Literally used to be like that. And now I'm like totally mindful that that can bring them down. Right? It's conscious and it's purposeful and it's intentional. And it's us choosing to flip the role. The rescuer becomes the coach, someone who supports other people without sacrificing their own stability. So I was also a rescuer, right? And now I had to become someone who realizes that my own needs come first. I had a friend who needed something, and it was at the expense of my own family time that I kept giving. And I had to put a boundary around it. And I had to say, I can help during these hours. But once the kids get home from school at 3 o'clock, I really have to focus on that. Right? Because my dinner was getting pushed back, the kids' homework was getting pushed back. I was feeling overwhelmed then for the rest of the night. I felt like I was going below the line with blame and guilt, like I'm not being a good mom. I was being an amazing friend, but I wasn't being a great mom, and I had imbalance. So I had to go into the coach role and say, I can support you during these hours, right? Because I had to keep myself on the dock and not swim below the line. So in order to get into this empowerment triangle, we have to be on the dock. There's no way to enter these three other roles if we are not grounded on our own dock first. Then we can stop reacting to the chaos and start really proactively responding with clarity and with complete purposeful intention. I always say I live my life on purpose. I live my life with intention. We're going to do a whole lesson on intention. But from the dock, now you have this bird's eye view. You can access any tools. You have access to it. Your brain is operating. You're calm. You're focused. You can call for help. Maybe you can't help that person. Maybe I'm not the person that can help my friend. But maybe if from staying on my dock, I can say, hey, didn't you say that your mom was a really good listener? Didn't you say that your mom went through something like this? Because now I can access that. Maybe I need to call for help. Maybe they need to call for help. Right? Maybe you can make more thoughtful decisions from up on that dock. You can weigh your options, and everything can be more deliberate. Right? And we can think about all the tools we have up there. Up on the dock, maybe you have like a thing that you can throw in the water, a floaty. Right? Maybe you can throw a rope in. Maybe there's a stick that you can use to pull in. Maybe you can ask your kids to come and help you pull because the person's that is too heavy, right? There's so many different things. So in your workbook, you're actually going to see just this page. And it's just going to be a picture of the dock. And I really recommend writing, the name of the people that are on the docks closest to you on those other docks. If there are people that you are connected to, even if they're not fully connected, just so that you know all the players in your life and you can start to really visualize how you might be falling off your dock. Because we can fall off our docks, you guys. So what happens if you fall off your dock? Well, first, we can actually prevent ourselves from falling off the dock, right? We can see that we're approaching the edge, the emotional edge. We can start, that's what's going to start happening. So right now, you're going to be off the dock usually before you realize that you're off the dock. You're going to find yourself in one of those victim roles before you even realize that you were off the dock. But I promise you, the more we do this work, the more you're going to realize that you're at the edge of going off your dock, and you will be able to catch yourself from falling in. You will be at that line, and you will be able to catch yourself from going to the anger, frustration, disappointment. But until then, once you're off, you have to pause, right? So if you could pause before you fall off, we're back to the emotional ladder. Same thing. Power of the pause. Do I need a new perspective or a new path? Right? You could do the same thing if you're off your dock and you're in the water and you go from drowning or persecuting or rescuing to just pausing and floating for a second and saying, whoa, how did I get in here? Right? I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to work to get out of the water. Right? You have to give yourself some grace because it's easier to stay balanced on your dock than it is to continuously have to swim back to your dock and climb out. Right? So it's a practice. We're going to get to the edge. We're going to fall off. We're going to learn and practice with each time. Every time it happens, we learn that there's a person, place, or thing that's pushing us off, right? We learn that something is our trigger. So now with this DISC assessment, you're going to start to see what your triggers are. It actually outlines what your triggers are. Like maybe your trigger is inefficiency. And so anyone that's on a dock near you that is inefficient might trigger your efficiency trigger, right? And now you're jumping in like a victim to their inefficiency, or you're trying to rescue them from their inefficiency, or you're trying to persecute them from their inefficiency, right? We're going to start to learn what our triggers are. And then we're also going to see, well, they're not an efficient person. That's not in their personality. They're this, like they're outgoing and influential. Like they're not necessarily thinking about all the different steps. So once we realize that we're in the water, in any of the roles, we're just going to pause and we're going to like float. We're just going to float and take a second and regain our stability and then say, how do I get back to safety? So how do you get back on your dock? Right? Maybe it's just mindfulness. Maybe you have to go do something physical. Maybe you have to reach for that one better thought, better feeling thought, right? Anything that's going to give you the emotional stability to interrupt the spiral and get you out of the whirlwind that you were in is what we're going to do. And you got to think of it like I'm getting back to my dock. I'm swimming back to my dock. It's not always easy. Sometimes you cannot get back to the dock yourself. Sometimes you know someone that is such a good anchor that you need to reach out to that person and say, I know you're anchored and I need some help getting out of the water. That's not a victim. A victim doesn't say, I need some help getting out of the water, right? That is a creator. A creator says, I want this life that I know I can create, and I'm going to go and try and find the tools to do it. Right? So maybe you have that person. I know I have that person. I have a grounding person that will help me get back to my dock. They speak my language. They know what triggers me. They know what frustrates me. And they just say, they're on the dock and they say, let's take a look at the big picture. How did you get in the water? I literally had a conversation with one of my friends last night, and she was completely off her dock. And I said, why do you think you feel that way? And she said, I don't know. And that's why I'm calling you. I need you to help me find clarity on why I am feeling this way right now. And we did. But I was her friend on the dock. She was in the water. She recognized she was in the water. She was drowning for a second. And she immediately said, I need some help. Not I'm helpless, but I floated and I can't find my own way back. I need some help. And in 2 seconds, we got her back on her dock. In 2 seconds, because I could see from the bird's eye view up there what dragged her into the water. And she was like, that's what dragged me into the water. I knew it wasn't this other thing. And I kept telling myself it was this other thing, but it wasn't. It wasn't. She reacted to something that she thought about. She didn't jump off her dock. And then someone told her that her reaction was not okay. Then she went in the water. It was that other person. It was the persecutor. The persecutor came in and she fell off her dock. And now she literally was swimming and she didn't want to feel that way. That's the beauty of this work, guys. We have a choice whether to feel this way or not feel this way. We have a choice whether to be flailing in that water or coming up for air and getting back on the dock. And that's how we flip the script. So if you'll see in the workbook, there's steps on how to get back on the dock, and it's flip the script. So when you're calm, you can use the feel good formula. You can say to yourself, can I reframe the perspective? Like how did I get off my dock? I don't want to fall off again. If I'm constantly off my dock around this person, I either need to loosen my rope and push that person's dock a little bit further away, because whatever they're doing on their dock is so triggering to me that it's either causing me to fall off or they're literally close enough to push me off. There are people that are coming close to your dock and literally pushing you off because it feels better to them that you're the victim than they are. Right? So we either have to learn to loosen the rope from those relationships. We don't have to send them away. We don't have to completely detach our docks. But if it's not safe to be super close to them, because either we're falling off all the time when we're near them until we can work out the triggers ourselves and do this work so that we know, when we're falling in the water, or we can just let them loose. And that's where they're going to stay for a little while. Right. And in Karen's case, she untethered from her ex and let him go. In Mary Margaret's case, she realized that persecutor was keeping her in the water and she untethered and let it go. Right. And now you're safe. So in the empowerment triangle, the creator is taking intentional steps to design. They're flipping the script. In the challenger role, they're calling out the limiting beliefs. That's when we reflect. We're reflecting. Once you're back on the dock, what are my 3 questions? What happened? What did I learn? What's next? If I fell off the dock, it's for a reason. I was supposed to learn something. What happened? Meaning, what triggered me to go off the dock, or who pushed me? What did I learn about that situation? It's not safe to be around this person when I'm blank. It's not safe to go to this place. If I, let's say weight loss is like what you're looking for. It's not safe for me to go to my favorite restaurant, Carmine's, and expect myself to not eat fried calamari if that's my favorite food ever. And I'm putting myself in a position to fall off the dock, right? You get to say, what happened? What did I learn? What's next? And then the coach piece is seeking support. Like my friend called me and was like, can you be the coach? Can you be the coach to help me? I didn't take over. I asked questions. I got curious. I listened. I heard her from before. I took her past experiences and I sat on top of the dock and I was able to coach her to get out of the water. And I have to tell you, she texted me at 4:30 and I didn't call her till 6:30. I saw the text at 4:30. I could have easily been the rescuer. I had stuff to do. And I knew that it was going to consume me for 2 hours and I had to get the stuff I had to get done for work in order to be able to talk to her. Right? So I purposefully didn't become the rescuer. I became the coach. I said, I'm not free now, but I can call you at 6:30. So these roles are only effective if we can be on our dock. So you have the workbook, you have these steps. Now I'm just going to ask you guys, what do you think, or who do you think, or what circumstances do you think pull you off your dock into one of those victim roles? Who wants to share? I have somebody. I have no high eyes going on here. You guys are going to make Karen feel bad. She's going to unmute and feel like she has to save the day and rescue me. What do you got, Karen?
Well, it's something we talked about last week. My mom can pull me off my dock a lot.
Yep.
But I gave you the example last week of, thank God I'm aware of dock work, and I didn't let her pull me in. I didn't react as I usually did in the past, and I chose to excuse myself, where in the past it would have been an all-out disagreement. And I think I told you part of what almost pulled me off the dock was I was feeling very judged and unfairly judged. And I realized that after the fact, but I was wise enough that I knew I didn't want to drown. So I had to just kind of remove myself, untether a little bit, for the better of both of us, because I love and adore her, but she can get me.
She can get you. She's a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
Dog number 2. And this is the picture, right? So I'm showing the rescuer and she's leaving her kids behind. They're crying over there, right? And I'm showing that the persecutor has the life raft in her hand, but she literally needs to tell the victim what they did wrong before she gives it to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then she'll go in and rescue them because she'll feel bad about it. But the girls at the top, the American Indian women that I have up there, they're hanging out with their solo cup, enjoying life up there on top, sitting on the dock of the bay, right? Empowered. Who else? Who else can relate to this? Who else can tell me who pulls them off their dock the most? Anybody? All right, I'm going to call on somebody. Dum, dum, dum. Antoinette, I'm going to unmute you. There we
Okay.
go.
Did you hear me?
Yeah. How do you fall off your dock, Antoinette?
Oh boy, this hit home big time. Uh, my husband pulls me off all the time. He likes to play the victim. Constantly plays the victim. Poor me, my life is tough and all that. And I am so the rescuer. Always swooping in, trying to make it better.
At the expense of?
My mental health. I'm stressed all the time. Sometimes at the expense of my kids. Yeah, mostly my mental health though, because that's what stresses me so much.
So as the rescuer, can you see a way yet where you can flip that to become the challenger
Not yet, but
or the coach
I'm hoping the coach, that I'm going to learn the tools to be the coach.
and throw
You know,
them a lifeline, right? And you stay on your dock, but throw a lifeline. I
right.
had a very big victim thing going on here in our family dynamic. And I literally had to just start saying, what is it that you could do to flip that? And I would have to say, is that so? Is that so? Was such a powerful way to change the victim mindset. I would hear it and I would say, is that so? And it would just make the person reflect, right? Because if they're living down here, they are swimming in it. It is everything happens to me and nothing. And it's all the limiting beliefs you hear always, never, nothing, right? All those words are victim words, right? And you can just say, is that so? And then they're like, yeah, it's so, right? And you're like, oh, okay. When I think about that, I think I see it a little bit differently. It's so interesting to me that you see it that way. Right? Then we got to find the words that aren't persecutor. We got to find the words that aren't, passive. We're going to get to communication, but, it's the way I see it. We have a really good life. The way I see it, it's all the gratitude things, right? Is that so? Yeah, it's so. Oh, well, the way I see it, we have this, right? Or we're so lucky, or we're so blessed, or we're so, we're such in a good place that we can do something to fix that situation. Right. And maybe it is so. Maybe that person does feel that, right? But they don't have to choose to feel that way. Is there any other way that we can look at this so that you don't have to feel so sad? Is there any other way to look at this so that you don't have to feel so bad? Right? We're going to ask them. That's how you coach. Is there any other way that you can see this so it doesn't have to feel that way? And we just have to keep repeating it. So I would go from being able to do that once. And this is the power of the practice of this, you guys, right? Because I would be able to show up in that kind, compassion on top of my dock place once. When the victim then tried to pull me in the water with even more negativity, the second time I fell off my dock. And that became my new pattern. And then I had to recognize I stayed on my dock. What happened? I stayed on my dock once, used all my energy to stay up there, and then I had no more energy to prevent it from happening the second time. Because the victim is not just being like, you're right, let me swim. The victim's going to give you a lot of resistance, right? A lot of resistance.
Absolutely.
And they may sink further in thinking no one's coming to rescue them. And now you really want to jump in and help them, or you really want to jump in and persecute them. Right. And now it's at your own expense again. So I had to learn that my hardest part was the second part. Right. It was what happened. What did I learn? What's next? I'm on the emotional edge the second time the victim reaches out, because now they're really not listening or they don't want to be helped. Clearly, you don't want to be helped. Right. And then that's where I had to learn how to be calm and just say, you know where I am. Is there something else I can do for you? I'm not willing to come in the water. Right. And here's the thing, you guys, this language, you can teach it to other people. I'm going to post the blog on doc work, and you can share it with people, and you can teach people what doc work is, right? Like in my house, we actually say to each other, I'm off my dock. Like now I can say to them, listen, I am off my dock, and until I'm able to get back on, I can't help you. So when Layla's super anxious and I've already stayed calm and stayed on my dock once and thrown her a lifeline, if she continues to still be anxious, I know I can't continue to interact with her without going in the water. And if I'm in the water, I'm persecuting, and it's not nice. And they don't like that version of me. So I have learned to say, if I stay in this conversation, I'm going to get off my dock, and it's not going to be good for either one of us. So I'm going to go in my room until I'm able to calm down. And maybe you could do the same thing. And here's the thing. She'll keep coming after me, because now she goes into, I'm so sorry. I don't want you to be off your dock. How do you get back? And now she's apologizing. And I will look at her and I will say, I have to go. I am not on my dock, baby. I have to go to my room. Give me a few minutes. I promise I'm coming back to you. Right. But she has this sense of control where she wants to control things, and she wants me not to leave. Part of her anxiety is that I'm leaving. But I have to understand that no matter how much I want to help her, I cannot help her if I get in that water. I cannot help her if I get in that water. Right. So I have the same thing. I have a son that's a high D, and he's also anxious, and everything has to be his way. He's the one where I am so triggered that I use ChatGPT to help me write text messages back to him. I'm almost flailing off my dock by his messages, because he's literally being a victim, and I want to persecute. I have recognized who I am. I have recognized my role, and I don't like it. It doesn't feel good to do that. Right? In the moment it does, because I want to be right, and I want to tell him what to do, and I want to order him around, and I don't want him to feel that way. But really it's because I have this sense of failure, that I failed them as a mom. I don't want them to feel anxious. I already gave you the tools on how to not feel anxious. I gave you the tools on how to go out into the world and do what you need to do. I have one, he's got ADHD. He's got tools, right? But when he's in it, he can't access them. And me persecuting him is not going to help him access them. So what do I have to do to stay on my dock? I have to use ChatGPT, and I have to type in what I want to say in a persecutor way. And then I have to say, please help me rewrite this so that I am empathetic and compassionate and coaching instead of persecuting. And it does. And then I take what it says and I rewrite it. That sounds like me. I'm so sorry, buddy, that you're feeling this way. I know how overwhelming it can be when we have 5 tests at the same time. Is there anything that you can think of doing that maybe you learned from that tutor I got in high school that specialized in this? Immediately he writes back, yeah, I guess I can, I guess I can color coordinate whatever. And then immediately after he gets on it, he's close to his dock, and then immediately the victim comes back. That's not going to work anyway. And I'll say, oh, did you try it already? I'm so sorry. Do you see it? Do you guys see it? It's real life. This is real life. I'm not saying you learn this and you stay on your dock. I'm telling you the God's honest truth. It's about noticing when you're off, deciding you don't want to be below that line anymore. You don't like what it feels like to be in the water. It's why you're all here.
Mhm.
Who signed up for this class because we don't want to be in the water anymore? Every single one of the 11 of you that are here did not want to be in the water. You noticed you were in the water. You didn't have words for it. You didn't know why you were in it. But you're in the water. It's a choice to get out. It's a choice once you see it. I'm not saying it's a choice all the time. I'm not saying you didn't make the right choice before you joined this class. I'm saying now you have awareness. Awareness is one thing. Practical application is another. And I don't want you guys to get discouraged if you keep finding yourself falling off the dock, because you might, because you have relationships with these people and they expect you off the dock. They expect you off the dock. It is what they think is going to happen. It's safe for them. I'm going to reach out to you. You're going to jump in the water. I don't have to be in the water by myself. We're both going to flail. We're both going to be exhausted. And then we're both going to swim out. And eventually I'm going to pretend it never happened and make it go away. And the women that are here, we're not willing to pretend it didn't happen anymore and just pretend it didn't happen and make it go away. We want to know why we keep falling in the water. So that's what this is all about. All right. So I'm really excited because now we can talk about I'm on my dock, I'm off my dock. That's really like I found myself off my dock. I was below the line. I found myself off the dock. You may not understand. You may not have the words to say, I was the victim. I was the persecutor. I was the rescuer. I still don't even remember all those words. It doesn't matter. I was off my dock. And what did I do? I expected someone to come save me. One of the women in this group, first session, if something was going on in her life, I explained this and she goes, oh my God, I expected him to jump in and rescue me. Why would I expect him to jump in and rescue me? I can rescue myself. We can rescue ourselves. That's the first thing the victim needs to say. If you are the victim, I can rescue myself. I just have to find the tools to swim back, calm down, rescue myself. Right? Persecutor, it's tough. I'm telling you, I'm her. The rescuer, very tough. Because that person in the water, you're going to use all your tools from the dock and they're going to sink and you're going to think they're going to drown. Your brain is going to tell you if I don't jump in, they cannot survive. That's not true. It may not be pretty. They may have to deal with some stuff, but we all have the ability to survive. We have to choose to do that. And if you're not choosing to do that, my life is not going to be at the expense of you choosing to drown yourself. That's big stuff for one-on-ones. All right, ladies, who's got a biggest takeaway? We can go around. I'm going to go around. I want everybody. There's only a few of us, unless Mary Margaret's not in the room. She'll get a pass. But Jamie, we're going to start with you. Oh, you love biggest takeaways. I'm going to ask you on mute.
Why do you always do this to me? Oh God, I'm tired. I don't know. Well, I definitely know that I'm a rescuer. I have to work on that. I think I could save everybody. Definitely to, the extent that I sometimes hurt myself. So I need to definitely work on that. And I live with someone who falls off his dock a lot. So we've talked about that. And
Yeah.
I'm always trying to fix it. So
And you're always trying to fix it, right? And
Always.
now it's going to be, we're going to learn some words to say when he's off that dock. And that keeps you grounded.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was a good takeaway, Jamie. Very good job.
Okay.
Teresa, biggest takeaway.
I didn't know that you could flip the triangle. I had no idea that you can actually not stay in the role that I thought I was born into, that I assumed my whole life. So I'm shocked by that one. That was a surprise. So I'm happy to see that we can do that, and I'm looking forward to figuring out how to do that.
And you have that I personality, which is influence, which is why it's so frustrating when people don't listen, right? We got to learn how to use that influence in a way that's in a coaching way, a
Right.
loving, coaching, curious way that doesn't pull you in the water. And if it's not working, I got to move away. I got to move away from your dog. I got to move away. That's all I got, because I'm not coming in anymore. I've made a decision. I'm not coming in. I love you. I want your dock near mine, but I'm constantly in the water and it doesn't feel good. We're going to make you a coach. We're going to make you a coach. All right. Antoinette, biggest takeaway.
Oh, I'm a rescuer, but I like the idea of knowing that I can become a coach. And I don't have to stay a rescuer.
And you feel empowered, you don't feel anxious about it. You feel empowered that you can be a coach.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so good. Some people are so in that rescuer role that they're like, there's no way that person will never let me. Right. And then you move into victim.
Mhm.
Then you move into victim
Right.
because that person's never going to let me. Well, that person doesn't have control over you. You have a doc. They have a doc. You can choose to go in. I love it.
Yeah.
We're going to teach you how to become a coach. We're going to get you the effective listening skills and the effective communication skills. It's all coming. Very
Awesome.
exciting.
Very good. Me too.
Mary Margaret, what do you got?
Well, as you know, I've already been a coach and I still have that in me, but it's like learning to find the right language for the person that you're talking to, because sometimes it happens and it's really easy and it's not as much of a challenge and they understand, and other people really fight you, kind of like what you were saying. And so I don't know so much it's that I can't recognize those things in me. I think it's just finding the right language to use to to be more effective, because I feel like my message gets lost sometimes because I can't always find the right language for that particular person, you know. And like sometimes I just have to put my hands up and be like, okay, like I can't also learn. I also learn that I can't force you to be in a different space. Like if that's where you are and I want to be there to help you, like I can be there to help you, but I can't force you to see it a different way. I can try to like, what do they say? Like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So I have
Yeah,
to.
but then they also say if you salt the oats, you can encourage the drinking. We're going to learn to salt the oats. So I want to just show you guys because it made me think about this. Hopefully this is a picture. Disc. It's not the one I wanted. Yeah, this is the one I wanted. So this is the disc profile that you guys have in your books, right? And this is how you learn to coach different people. Because that's why what you just said, Mary Margaret, was so impactful, because for some people it's really easy to coach, and for some people they want nothing to do with it, right? And they'll sink deeper and deeper and they'll resist everything you're trying to do. Well, when we try to coach people in a way they can hear, right? We're trying to coach people based on our strengths, on our personality. And we're trying to love people with our love languages, because next week after that will be love languages. We try to love and coach and talk and communicate with people in the style that we are. And it doesn't fly with everybody. And they don't get what they need. But if we can learn to identify who people are, like I had to learn that my high D son couldn't be spoken to in any way that threatened that he was being criticized or that he had no control of the situation. So my persecutor had to become a coach, but I didn't have the language. And I knew that if I criticized at all, he was going to be triggered even more. Right? So I had to learn to say, to build on this, I had to say, oh, he's self-assured. He sees his opportunities. He's results oriented, right? So I had to learn to say, hey, what did you learn from that person? Not, this is what you have to do. He doesn't want to hear that. He's a D, he wants to do what he wants to do. I had to ask him, right? And then my daughter is an S. So she's cooperating and traditions, and she doesn't want to lose stability or anything unplanned, but she's a good listener. So I have to keep repeating, mommy just needs to get back on her dock. But see how she's persistent, right? But I have to learn to speak to that. If I'm going to coach her, instead of being a persecutor, I have to coach her to her strengths. Right? I know you can hear me, baby. I know you understand that how this doc work works. And I have to go to my room. Right? Because she's a great listener. I'm not saying that to the big D guy. You get it? You see what I'm saying? So that's how we become really good coaches. That's how we flip the script. All right, ladies, it's 8:20. If you're watching this on replay, I would love, love, love if you would share your biggest takeaway too. We all shared ours. I really, really love this tool. If you haven't done the disc, do it before the holidays so that you can really start to think about who you are and what you need and who the other people in your lives are. You'll get confused between S's and C's. You'll get confused between C's and D's, but the I's are pretty much going to stand out. The I's are the ones that are talking in every room. The I's are the one that are trying to steal all the attention from people, right? The D's are kind of commanding their energy. They're like leaders. They're like presidents. They're like the people, right? The C's are the quiet types that are just always kind of sitting back and analyzing and taking it all in, right? And the S's are the lovers and the gatherers, and they're the people that want to keep the peace, right? So you're going to start to see who all of these people are in your lives, and you're going to start to say, that's why I don't mesh with them. C's and the I's, oh boy, we're opposite. C's cannot stand I's, and I's have a hard time that C's don't really take things personal. The C's take everything personal out of the equation. It's really about just efficiency, right? And I's are all about people. It's all about personal. D's and C's get along because they just want efficiency, but D's tend to be more people oriented than C's are. S's and C's, they just want things organized. That is very frustrating for a D who doesn't want you telling them what to do or how to do it, and an I who really just wants to do whatever they feel like it at all times. Squirrel, right? That's the I. I'm like, oh, that's pretty. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys had a system. I'm not doing that. Like, I'm going over here. Oh, and I was an intricate part of your system, and you need me, and you don't like conflict, so you don't want to tell me that you need me. So this S person down here is just feeling like crap, like no one cares about them. I put in all this time and effort to make this whole thing work for everybody, and she's doing that, right? That's the S. But if I don't know I'm an I don't really see that bothers an S. It's amazing, you guys. It's amazing. So do your disc profile. Make sure you do the one that I sent the second time. It's in the second email and it's posted in the group in comments. The Tony Robbins one does not give you a letter anymore. It just gives you its own evaluation of, so like Jamie, you were an SI. Yeah. So like Tony Robbins will give you a completely different name for an SI. Like it won't even tell you you're an SI, but it'll give you a name that says who you are, but it's a little confusing because we're trying to do DISC. So go with the one that gives you the letter. Tony used to, he doesn't do it anymore. And just take a look around and see who do I think is what. And in the next lesson, so we're not going to meet next Monday night, but I will be sending you love languages. It's a new lesson. It's going to be very similar to DISC. You're going to take your own, you're going to learn your own love language. I'm going to give you it. You can send it to your kids. There's one for little kids. If you have little kids, I don't think anybody here has little kids anymore, so they can take the adult one. But when you start to see, how other people receive love, you're going to see how your love sometimes can be misinterpreted, or how it gives us compassion for other people too. My husband and I, there's 4 love languages, there's 5 love languages, and none of ours were the same. And so all the things he was doing, I didn't see as love because all I was seeing was the lack of the way that I spoke love. And I didn't know how to communicate that I speak love this way. And so then I started seeing, oh, when he puts an umbrella up outside, that's his way of loving me. Oh, and then he needs me to say good job, even though it was kind of his role anyway. But it helped us so much because I saw it as love, where I used to be frustrated by it. And I spoke his language to make sure I told him good job, even though I think that's ridiculous. But if I want a relationship that works and I want love in return, in which case he would show up and do more things for me. Right. And then because he got his love from words of affirmation, he would then do small little gift giving for me, which is what I liked, because he wanted to show up for me. Right. So it wasn't, I have to do that. I have to tell him good job. I mean, it was, that's what I'm thinking in my head. I have to tell him good job on the fucking umbrella. Right. But I get to, I get to tell him good job for the umbrella because then I get for him to bring me coffee in the morning when he goes to Wawa. Right? And that's my love language. And then I'm like, oh, he loves me. He brings me coffee in the morning. Right? Versus he doesn't speak my language. So we're not meeting next Monday night, but you will get love languages. And then we will meet on the 30th. And I hope that most of you can come. The holiday hectic craziness will be over, except for New Year's Eve. I'm hosting and I'm still going to be here. So the 30th is a Monday night. We'll come together. We'll talk about love languages. We'll talk about DISC, and we'll talk about how many times we got off our dock. And all of the weeks I am doing one-on-ones. So I will not be working Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or the day after Christmas. But I will be working the Monday and the Friday and the Saturday for the one-on-ones. So if anybody can get that in, and I'm working all day. So I got all my wrapping already done. Like I'm in it. I'm okay. So book your one-on-ones, especially if we didn't have one this week. And let's talk about doc work. Let's talk about DISC, and let's talk about the emotional ladder. Thank you guys so much for coming. I wish everybody Merry Christmas. Everyone here celebrates that, right? James, do you? No. Hanukkah's the same time, right? We're aligned this year. I love when we're aligned. All my Jewish friends have people over at the same time. Like, it's amazing. So happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas to everyone out there. And I will see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.